Hi, Cancer Sun and Rising. Welcome to your May 2022 Astro Update. It's Raina here. May is a big month. We have some major transits occurring, and one of them is into the sign of Aries. Jupiter goes into Aries on the 10th of the month, but Venus goes there on the 2nd of the month, so 8 days earlier. Venus has a much shorter transit. Jupiter is like a year, 13 months in one sign. So there's more significance about Jupiter going into a new sign than there necessarily is with Venus. But both of these planets are what are called benefic planets in Vedic astrology, meaning that they have a lot of good influences to them. And guess where they're going? They're going in that 10th house of career. So Venus in the 10th house can mean that you are seen in a very favorable way. Venus can bring charm, and the 10th house can be popularity or renown of some sort. It can be authority figures, and Venus can make them want to help you. This can also be money. You could be getting a raise. Obviously, I have to say could be because there are no guarantees. And remember that this is a general forecast. You have to look at your exact midheaven to see where your 10th house begins, like what degree of Aries. And so anyway, Jupiter here on the 10th can give a lot of opportunities career-wise to you. Maybe there are new directions you can go in, new avenues to explore, so that can feel more free. Speaking of freedom, Jupiter is associated with long-distance travel, so that could possibly be what's going on. And Jupiter is all about luck, so that could be being at the right place at the right time. Oh. And Jupiter isn't going to stay in Aries all year. It will go retrograde and eventually go back into Pisces, and that will go back to that 9th house. So I do believe that for some of you, there is a connection between travel and work or career opportunities, let's put it that way. On the same day that Jupiter goes into Aries on the 10th, Mercury goes retrograde at 4 degrees of Gemini. Gemini is the sign before you, so this is the 12th house, Cancer, and a Mercury retrograde here can be, I don't know, maybe a past life regression. I really don't know how that could manifest for you if that's something you've been thinking about. Well, I will say that this can be something about reviewing your patterns altogether, because the 12th house can be self-defeating behaviors, patterns. And these are like unconscious patterns. I do believe in some cases, maybe in a lot of cases, they are from past life influences, and they're so deeply ingrained in us that we just do them automatically. There's a difference between the unconscious mind and the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind has more of an understanding of the motivating factor in what they do, because they have the memory of what has happened, like the traumas that's associated more with the 8th house, trauma of what has happened and how that has affected them. And they don't want to really deal with it in an outward way, but they still are affected by it, and they're still drawn to do certain things. The 12th house can be like complete amnesia, although there might be some like little hits psychic hits, I call them, where you have snatches of memory or familiarity. And so reviewing the kind of things that you do that don't help you in life, and not blaming other people, but really looking at it from your perspective. Actually, Mercury's going to go back into Taurus on the 22nd, and it's going to go back into that 11th house. And when it does that, it's going to bring up some of the things that you have been working towards in terms of long-range goals. And the 12th house is a house of spirituality. Oh, yeah, that's another good thing about a Mercury retrograde in the 12th. This could be good for meditation. But in the 11th house, since that's more about having your dreams come true, some of these things can be connected as well, because if people are doing things that that oppose their best interests, then they can't make those things happen. So these kinds of things are more, especially with the 12th house, more internalized. The 11th house can involve other people, reaching out to people that maybe you have been cut off from for some reason. 12th house is solitude, and the 11th house is friendships and groups. And so there might be maybe somebody is catching up with you and contacting you from your past when there's a Mercury retrograde. On the 16th, there's a lunar eclipse at 25 degrees of Scorpio, and this is happening in your 5th house of romance. So that's pretty interesting. It's also the house of creativity. So lunar eclipse here can be a breakthrough for people who have had some sort of creative blockage. You may be feeling that you're able to do things again. Maybe there's been a long drought. If this is love related, it's either one thing that can be very beneficial for Cancer. If there's someone who you've had a hard time getting over, this might do the trick, because a lunar eclipse can bring things to a head, and it allows you to let go finally. There's a tenacious quality of Cancer that holds on to things, but of course some of that is coming from misguided sentimentality, where the person is overly sentimental because they're focusing on the good times, but they're not seeing, the situation altogether. Another possibility is a massive understanding of you and love and what has, been part of your life and what has held you back. So this might break down some of those barriers if you've had them up. On the 20th, the sun goes into Gemini. The sun goes into that 12th house, so that's a time of retreat, a time of contemplation, solitude, not really a very social time. So it's interesting that you have Taurus going back into that 11th house a couple of days later. That might be at odds with what you really want to do. So maybe people are contacting you, but you're not necessarily wanting to be contacted. I don't know. On the 24th, Mars goes into Aries. So Mars goes into that career sector. Of course, Mars is going to give a lot of... the first word that came to my mind was courage. And I don't know exactly why that would be necessary when you have Jupiter here and you have Venus here. I think, the possibility is I always see Cancer, even though Cancer is a cardinal sign, it is a water sign. And sometimes I see Cancer as being rather reticent because of that deep sensitivity towards the self, to really put yourself out there. And the 10th house is really out there, It's, your reputation is on the line in the 10th house. And so whatever it is that you're doing, even if you're working for yourself, you can feel that sense of like fear of being exposed, fear of ridicule, that something that is your baby, so to speak, is going to be criticized. And so that takes a lot of guts for anybody, but let alone a Cancer. So that might be something that you're putting out into the world and having to have that extra confidence to do so. It can also be conflict with people in positions of authority. So you have all this good stuff happening that is very easygoing, the Venus and the Jupiter energy. And now we have this combative energy. And, that's sometimes life kind of goes that way, that you think you're on easy street, and then there's this fly in the ointment that feels like, everything is so good except for this one thing. So if there's like one person who is a suit, if it's a corporate environment and you're having to deal with this person, and maybe they are kind of challenging you and it makes you feel on the defensive. Whenever Mars is in the 10th house, you have to play it cool, because you may be loaded for bear. You may be feeling like overly confident, even, with Jupiter being there as well. You could overestimate your charm and power and end up sabotaging something. So you don't want to do that. If somebody else is being combative, stay above the fray. Don't let them see you sweat, because they may be trying to get you into some kind of a situation in order to trap you in some way, so that they have an excuse to kick you to the curb. I mean, if this is somebody who has that authority, in other words. On the 28th, Venus goes into Taurus in that 11th house, and the 11th house is the house of gains also. So this is coming directly, it's the second house from the 10th. So it really is about career, financial boosts. And with Venus here, that looks like a thumbs up. So you might see whatever is going on. Yeah, maybe this is a salary negotiations when Mars is in that 10th house with Venus there. And when Venus goes into the 11th at the end of the month, it looks like it's going to be in your favor. Now remember that this is at the time that Mercury is also in that 11th house. So that negotiation that Mercury may be doing may have some of that elements to it, although they are not in conjunction by any stretch of the imagination. On the 30th, we have a new moon at 9 degrees of Gemini. So right before the end of the month, we have this new moon in Gemini, and it's in that 12th house for you. It's during the Mercury retrograde. And you may feel a sense of renewal as it pertains to spiritual matters. And this may be very important to you at this time, Cancer, because you're going through some things on the more worldly side that, if things do get combative at all, or, just when I say combative, I just mean that there might be a conflict that you have to iron out. And in those situations, it's not the end of the world, but sometimes it can be disappointing if somebody that you trusted turns out to be not as, the word that came to mind was ethical, but there's nothing to suggest any deception here. Just the coercion is how I see it, which is a manipulation. So it may feel like, oh, I'm just like a piece of meat to them. I'm just like a cash cow. And um, even though maybe salary negotiations are just normal things that happen, if they're not done right, the employee can feel like they're it's almost like dehumanizing because they're not being looked at as a human being with very real needs. And it's all about the employer and what they can get for the employees. So um, try to maintain your positivity, and this can be something that really nourishes you in terms of your spiritual perspective, which is the ultimate one. Okay, Cancer, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, I'm promoting my double readings. If you'd like the tarot, I have full-length tarot reading and a natal chart analysis, or full-length, transits reading for a special price called the whole enchilada, and a double astrology reading, natal chart analysis with the hour of transits called my deep dive reading for a special price, and then single readings. You can find out all about that at the link below. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.